What if not eating for 10 days didn't weaken you but revealed who you really are? Most people believe that going without food for 10 days would break the human body, that energy would collapse, that the brain would shut down, that survival would be impossible without constant intake. But modern physiology tells a very different story. A carefully observed 10-day fast doesn't push the body into chaos. It exposes systems that modern eating habits keep permanently suppressed. This is not a challenge. It is a biological reveal. What follows is not motivation, not discipline, culture, and not dietary ideology. It is a pure science explanation of what happens inside the human body during a controlled 10-day fast. Why the first days feel unbearable, why clarity replaces hunger, and why the experience permanently changes how your brain understands food. The first thing most people expect to fail during fasting is strength. In reality, the first system to react is blood sugar regulation. Within hours of stopping food intake, insulin begins to fall. This is not dangerous, it is expected. Insulin's primary role is not just sugar control, it is also a storage hormone. As insulin drops, your kidneys receive a signal they haven't felt in years: release. Sodium exits, water follows, headaches appear, lightheadedness emerges, focus feels fragile. This is why day 1 feels worse than day 5. You are not starving, you are decompressing. At the same time, the brain experiences something more disruptive: the sudden absence of predictable reward. For years, food, especially refined carbohydrates, has provided effortless dopamine signaling. Remove that signal abruptly, and the brain reacts like something essential is missing. Restlessness, irritability, emotional volatility. Not hunger, neural expectation withdrawal. This phase is temporary, but intense, because it reveals how deeply eating has been wired into mood regulation rather than survival. By day 2, the stomach is quiet, but the mind is loud. This is where most fasts end. The discomfort is not coming from energy deficiency. It is coming from dopamine recalibration. Repeated food stimulation dulls dopamine receptors over time. When stimulation stops, receptors begin resensitizing a process that feels like absence, emptiness, even anxiety. Cravings spike precisely when receptors are repairing. This is why the urge to eat feels psychological, not physical. Your body is calm. Your brain is negotiating. This phase exposes a powerful truth most people never encounter. Much of what we call hunger is habit-driven anticipation, not nutritional need. When people fail here, they assume weakness. In reality, they interrupted a neurochemical reset. Around day 3, another silent system takes control: the kidneys. With insulin low, the kidneys stop conserving sodium aggressively. Fluid retention reverses. Faces deflate. Abdomen softens. Joints feel lighter. The scale drops rapidly, not fat, but stored water bound to glycogen. This is often misinterpreted as success or failure. It is neither. It is simply physiology correcting pressure. However, as water leaves, electrolytes leave with it. Without sodium, potassium, and magnesium, fatigue deepens. This is why hydration alone makes fasting harder. The issue is not absence of food. It is absence of minerals. When electrolytes stabilize, symptoms soften dramatically, and the body enters a calmer metabolic rhythm than it has known in years. By day 4, the body enters one of the most difficult and misunderstood phases of fasting. Glycogen stores are nearly depleted, and the system reaches a crossroads. It must either panic or adapt. The liver responds first, activating gluconeogenesis, a tightly regulated process that produces glucose only for cells that cannot function without it. This fuel is rationed carefully, reserved for red blood cells, parts of the brain, and critical tissues. At the same time, fat metabolism accelerates in the background, preparing to take over as the dominant energy source. This transition feels deeply uncomfortable. Energy drops without warning. Mental fog thickens. Muscles feel heavy and unresponsive. Many interpret this as failure, but it is not. It is metabolic friction. The body is letting go of a fast but fragile fuel system and returning to one designed for endurance. Evolution built this pathway for scarcity and survival. Modern life rarely allows it to engage. At this point, mitochondria are forced to adapt. Efficiency slowly increases. Oxidative stress begins to fall. But adaptation always feels like loss before it feels like gain. Around day 6 or 7, the body enters a noticeably different state. Not dramatic, not intense, just quieter. Hunger begins to soften, not because discipline improved, but because energy finally becomes steady. Fat replaces glucose as the primary fuel source. Ketone levels rise, providing a slow, consistent supply of energy. Blood sugar stabilizes on its own, without the constant need for external input. For many bodies, this is an unfamiliar calm. The brain does not accept this shift immediately. Glucose was fast and comforting. Ketones feel foreign at first. Neurons resist, not because ketones are harmful, but because adaptation takes time. Once adaptation begins, the difference is subtle but unmistakable. Ketones burn cleaner than sugar, producing less metabolic stress. Mental fog starts to lift. Thoughts feel less urgent, more ordered. This is not euphoria. There is no rush. What appears instead is steadiness, calm, focus, energy without agitation. This metabolic state is not modern. It is ancient. It is the condition humans evolved to enter during prolonged scarcity, now quietly reactivated. By day 7 or 8, a quieter transformation takes the lead, one that unfolds beneath the surface rather than on the scale. With sugar absent and insulin held low, systemic inflammation begins to fall. This is not sudden, but it is measurable. Proteins that were repeatedly damaged by glycation now face less oxidative stress. Collagen fibers, once stiffened by sugar bonds, start regaining flexibility. Joints feel looser, movement less resistant. This change is often mistaken for something cosmetic. It is not. It is biochemical relief. Inside the cell, mitochondria operate under a lighter load. With fewer glucose spikes to process, they generate energy more efficiently and with less collateral damage. Immune signaling calms as inflammatory messengers decline, no longer provoked by constant metabolic stress. As digestion quiets, the body reallocates energy toward repair rather than processing. Tissues receive attention they rarely get in a fed state. This is why many people look unexpectedly rested, even without eating. The body is no longer fighting. It is finally restoring balance. By days 8 and 9, the shift becomes less about fuel and more about perception. Taste changes before hunger returns. With constant stimulation removed, taste receptors regain sensitivity they quietly lost over years of exposure. Flavors feel clearer, more defined, no longer competing against an artificial intensity. The brain begins processing sweetness and richness accurately again. At the same time, appetite signals realign. Leptin, the hormone that communicates fullness, becomes easier for the brain to hear. Meals feel complete sooner. Cravings lose their urgency, not because restraint has increased, but because the signal driving them has softened. Food also loses its emotional charge. Eating is no longer tied to relief, distraction, or reward, because emotional instability has settled. The nervous system feels calmer, less reactive. For many people, this phase creates a permanent change in how food is experienced. Not avoidance, not fear, just neutrality. By day 10, fasting is no longer something you are doing. It becomes something that is showing you information. You have already moved through the recalibration of dopamine, where reward stopped controlling behavior. You have felt the kidneys release pressure that once went unnoticed. You have experienced your fuel hierarchy being rewritten, inflammation falling, and appetite signals returning with clarity rather than urgency. But none of those changes are the most important outcome. What matters now is awareness. You begin to recognize which sensations were true hunger and which were habit, which discomforts signaled danger and which were simply the sound of adaptation taking place. The body feels less mysterious, less reactive, more readable. This phase strips away distortion. It reveals how much modern eating patterns interfere with perception, not survival. This is not a prescription. It is not a recommendation. It is a mirror. And what it reflects is not weakness, but adaptability. This explanation is educational, not instructional. Extended fasting is not appropriate for everyone. Individuals using insulin, certain medications, or managing chronic conditions require medical supervision. Stress physiology matters. Psychological balance matters. Health is not created through punishment or extremism, but through understanding. A 10-day fast doesn't make you disciplined. It makes you aware. It shows you that your body is far more adaptable than modern habits suggest. That hunger is quieter than expectation. That clarity emerges when noise is removed. The goal is not to stop eating. The goal is to stop being controlled. At Pure Science Explained, we don't promote extremes. We explain mechanisms so you can choose with clarity, not fear. If this exploration helped you see your body differently, let us know. And if you're curious, what happens when eating resumes? That story is just as important. We'll see you in the next one.